bridge, which allowed authorities to limit vehicle traffic prior to the collision. Officials say it appears to have been a terrible accident and not related to terrorism. The 6 people who are unaccounted for were part of a construction crew filling potholes. The collapse is expected to cause a logistical nightmare along the East Coast, shutting down ship traffic and snarling cargo and commuter traffic. Our region is home to many massive and important bridges: the Ambassador Bridge, Blue Water Bridge in Sarnia, and of course the new Gordie Howe Bridge. Dale Molnar now on whether something like what we saw in Baltimore could happen here.
Shocking to watch the video. It appears that the vessel did lose power. It went to total darkness.
But Windsor Harbour Master Peter Barry says it's unlikely something like that would happen here with the Ambassador Bridge.
It's very shallow around the Canadian pier and the Canadian side of the Detroit River. So if a ship was to lose steering or lose power in that area, it'd be very difficult to have that much of a momentous impact that we saw. Plus, we don't see ships of that size coming through here as was stacked with those containers.
Back in 1962, a ship called the Montrose hit a barge on the Detroit River and it capsized just east of the Ambassador Bridge. That's the closest thing Windsor has seen to the incident in Baltimore. Barry says if a ship loses power in the Detroit River, there is a procedure to follow.
Immediately they call the MCTS, the Main Communication and Traffic Service based in Sarnia, and on the radio, and then the notifications go out to the captain of the port in Sector Detroit, to my office, and then we start to mobilize what we believe is necessary to deal with what has happened. Typically, when a captain loses power in their ship on the Detroit River, the first thing they do is drop anchor.
In Sarnia, ships aren't allowed to pass each other in the area under the Blue Water Bridge since a collision in the 70s. That's because the river is so narrow there. The piers on the Blue Water Bridge are on land, but there are similar emergency procedures in Sarnia.
When an emergency would occur, we would be alerted. We would be sent out like a normal fire call, only we would respond with our 3 Marine units. And then there's an extra Marine unit that comes from the village of Point Edward.
A civil engineering professor at McMaster University isn't exactly sure what happened in Baltimore, but says the design and age of the bridge in Baltimore may have played a factor in the collapse.
Impact that the cargo ship on the pier was more than the pier could resist in 2 ways. One of them is that it must have either displaced it or moved it enough to create instability at the interaction, the support between the steel structure and the concrete pier. And then being a continuous steel structure on top, the minute you start to create a bit of instabilities, then that whole structure led to a progressive collapse.
Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The 2024 budget has been officially tabled by the Premier's finance minister, and it includes a stark look at Ontario's growing deficit. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley brings us the story.
The Premier and the finance minister all smiles on budget day, but listen carefully to the budget speech and you'll hear some warnings.
For the global and national challenges facing our public finances are real.
For the fiscal year that wraps at the end of March, the province is looking at a deficit of just $3 billion. But for the coming year, the red ink is forecast to balloon to nearly $10 billion. Other than the first year of the pandemic, that's the biggest Ontario deficit in a decade.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We can see it. But that said, we are not out of the tunnel quite yet.
The government blames the deficit on slower than expected economic growth. The budget predicts Ontario's GDP will rise just 0.3% this year, and it shows government revenues from sales tax, the LCBO, and cannabis are all expected to shrink. Despite that, the finance minister isn't talking cuts.
We're not backing down from investing in what matters most, and we are not going to increase costs on our people.
So what's new in the budget? As CBC revealed first, some auto insurance reforms. Drivers will be able to lower their premiums if they opt out of certain coverage.
Allow for consumers to have more convenience and choice.
There's money to start planning for a new medical school at York University, the first in Canada to focus primarily on training family doctors. But the overall health budget rises just 1.3%. And the opposition pounced.
Once again, shortchanging our public health care system.
The message that the Conservatives sent today is that what matters most to people right now, accessible health care, affordable housing, the cost of living don't matter to them.
The budget does include more than $3 billion allotted to get high-speed internet to every community in Ontario by the end of next year, and $46 million to buy police forces, 4 new helicopters.
We're choosing to get it done. We're choosing to be there for the people of
The minister chooses to wrap his budget speech with slogans from the PC's 2 winning election campaigns. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And joining us live now to talk more about Ontario's budget is Minister of Finance, Peter Bethlen-Falvey. Thanks for joining us. Minister, what would you say is the most notable investment in this budget for people living here in Windsor-Essex?
Well, there's a lot for Windsor-Essex. Of course, the EC Row Highway Banwell interchange, continuing to fund the Nexstar battery plant, and of course, continuing to advance the Windsor-Essex Regional Hospital. But we're doing that across the province. We're investing in infrastructure, where it's hospitals, highways, transit, long-term care, schools, more schools. We're investing in the economy, and at the same time, we're helping people with the high cost of living by continuing the gas tax cuts, which puts more money back in the pockets of the hardworking Ontarians.
Windsor had been waiting for provincial funding to keep its drug consumption and treatment site open. We all know there was an incident in Toronto that prompted the province to examine these sites. Ours closed due to a lack of funding. Given the healthcare investments in today's budget, how close is Ontario to revisiting applications for these consumption sites?
Well, I'd direct you to the Minister of Health and Mental Health and Addiction for more specifics on that. But I can tell you that we're continuing to focus very much on the people with mental health and addictions right across the province. We've increased the healthcare budget by almost in the sector by $10 billion over 2 years, from 75 to 85 billion. So that's a massive investment, and not just hospital care and acute care, home care, mental health and addiction care. More money for human health resources, as Mike Crawley mentioned, a new medical hospital in York University to get more family doctors, more money for primary care, another over $500 million to get 600,000 more patients into our healthcare system. So, we're firing on all cylinders, and we'll continue to support healthcare in Windsor and right across the province.
As you know, auto theft is a problem in many areas of the province, and Windsor is no exception. The budget has earmarked $49 million to tackle this issue. How do you see this money being used by police, considering there's a large overseas component to this issue?
That's a great question. We're supporting our police forces right across the province, trying to give them the tools to combat auto theft and all forms of crime. And, we can't do it alone. We have to work with municipalities. We have to work with our provincial police forces. But who else we have to work with is the federal government, who's in charge of our ports. And a lot of these cars, they're getting put into containers, and then they're off in 48 hours into a country we can't even get into. So, we have to work together to combat auto theft, for example. We're putting more money into guns and gangs as well, and, combating all forms of crime in Ontario.
Well, thank you very much for that, Minister. That's Ontario's Minister of Finance, Peter Bethlen-Falvey. A Windsor-based program focused on helping cancer patients find new treatments recently got a large national investment to help it grow. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa reports.
Sometimes standard cancer treatments can't or don't work, and that's where clinical trials can come into play. These are new, innovative, and experimental treatments that are being studied, and they can be an option for people that are sick. But it's not always easy finding out how to enroll in this research. That's where the Clinical Trials Navigator program can help.
What we do is we navigate a system that is really difficult for everybody to navigate.
Dr. Ham's program uses patient navigators, and they will help connect Canadians to clinical trials all across the country.
So if we can kind of make all of the trials in Canada equally accessible to everybody in Canada, then we can actually perhaps improve that number of the trials that are truly available to people.
The program recently received a $198,000 grant from the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. It'll use that to expand to Winnipeg and Thunder Bay.
Well, having access to clinical trials is enormously important. It's important that we make a really strong ecosystem in Canada so that patients have access to novel therapies that can improve their health.
Dr. Devereaux is the principal investigator of a cross-country consortium that's working to bring more clinical trials into Canada.
Too much bureaucracy, which has actually limited some trials coming to Canada. We have to remember that we're a large country land-wise, but we're a small country in terms of population. So for novel therapies and companies to say, hey, we're gonna test our new drug or our new intervention, let's go to Canada, we have to be really efficient in order to make it worth their while to come here.
When it comes to Dr. Ham's program, he says that it's something he'd like to see expand beyond cancer to other illnesses. He also hopes that the system can become more automated so that Canadians can access it themselves. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Colette, I know those temperatures were in the double digits today, but it certainly didn't feel like it.
Yeah, it's tough, when we're looking at, now the cloud cover, but those gusty winds too. When you have some pretty breezy conditions, the winds right now gusting to about 60 kilometers an hour, it kind of, it can take some of the warmth away. I want to show you the jet stream, and this is looking ahead actually to the temperatures across the country, including ours, for tomorrow. But really, it's this deep trough in the jet stream I want to point out, because the system that's kind of moving in and having an impact on southern Ontario is very broad, and it's been bringing for 2 days now blizzard-like conditions into northwestern Ontario. So a really big difference in that temperature gradient in terms of what we're seeing as that system will be coming through. So our current readings at 13 degrees, that's not where we're going to be at this time tomorrow. Chatham-Kent 10, Sarnia even at 12. You can see these are just the sustained winds. I was just checking a moment ago and we had 59, 60 showing up, and that forecast for those winds to stay that way into the evening, or at least for the next few hours, kind of holds. So breezy, especially with a line of storms moving our way, and we'll get to that radar in a second. Then they back off somewhat, but we're still going to have some breezy conditions in the morning, and then we'll see those winds winding down further as the day wears on and the system gets further away from us and we kind of sink in and settle into this new air mass. So this is what I want to show you. Okay, there's the showers that have gone through. It's this line of storms where if I put the lightning strikes on here, you can see it was quite extensive just to the east of Kalamazoo earlier. Now there aren't as many lightning strikes as we're winding down and getting a little deeper into the evening. But still, some thunder and lightning, and this line is headed Windsor way and coming into southwestern Ontario. So give it another hour or so, maybe less, and we're going to be hearing a little bit of that. And there are going to be some locally heavier downpours. But what happens with this as it comes through is it then breaks apart. So now we're 10, 11 o'clock and just seeing that line really falling apart as we get into those overnight hours. Cloud cover moves in, some cooler temperatures. Oh, a few flurries trying to show up. I wouldn't expect too much out of that. It's going to take till later in the day that we'll really see some sun or clearing at least, and that'll be a nice setup as we go into Thursday as high pressure builds in. So additional amounts around 5 millimeters, 4 to 5. Other than locally where you'll have some heavier amounts with those storms coming in. This evening 11, overnight 5, tomorrow morning dipping further to 3, a little bit of drizzle possible. And it's tricky tomorrow with our daytime high. I've gone with 7 degrees. We could actually struggle to get there, but when the sun comes back out, things are going to be looking pretty good towards the end of the week and Good Friday.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
We are just past the halfway point of Ramadan. It's the holiest month of the year for Muslims, a time for spiritual reflection and empathy for the less fortunate. Of course, fasting is also involved. We were invited to a local restaurant to join in on the activities post-sunset.
Allahu Akbar. Right after the breaking iftar, there's a prayer that you need to do, and most of the places don't offer that. People avoid then going out. They do it mostly at homes or what have you, right? So we wanted to set up where people can pray, they can break their iftar, And we try to do this within an hour, maybe a little bit over, because after that there's a nightly prayer that people want to go to the mosques, right?
In Ramadan, this is holy month. It is very important for khair, for all Muslims. We commit ourselves more for reading Quran, for pray, Jama'at, as you see here.
I started fasting when I was young, so I'm kind of used to it already. But it still gets exciting when I break my fast, and I have a feeling of relief when I eat, because I've been waiting for it. I love the idea that we're doing it to feel with others, and not just doing it just for fun or anything. So I love that feeling, yeah.
You can see over here there's always different selections of rice. There's 2 types of rice. It's pasta, there's veggie selection, butter chicken. This is actually a very South Asian dish called nihari. People who are working, they probably love it, right? So they come back from work, they don't have to prep a meal because everybody's hungry, especially people with children and kids and what have you. So it's a nice option to have, that you can just get some rest, get ready, and go out and break a fast.
What does it mean for you, this meal?
It's a blessing. After a day of fast, you pray, and then in the end of the day, when you break it, then it's a blessing from God that you get to eat at last.
We fast because to be a good person and feel for the needy and the people that are unfortunate, that are not able to eat at all times. So we're trying to sort of feel in their circumstances. So iftar is a very important thing for me, and the month of Ramadan is very important.
Gloomy day out there today, but as Colette mentioned, there is some sun coming in the forecast. Coming up, a story on why the doctor shortage might be so severe. Stay tuned. Canada's family doctor shortage is a well-known story by now. Too many doctors are leaving family practice and not enough are entering it. CBC's Christine Birak looks at what might be a big factor: cost.
It's a frustrating question millions of Canadians are asking. Why can't I find a family doctor? Well, some new data reveals nearly 30% of family docs have left their offices and moved into other parts of healthcare. So why did they leave and where are they now? Based on billing information, the Canadian Institute for Health Information found nearly 10,000 family doctors were largely providing specialty care, many of them working in emergency medicine. Others shifted to psychiatry and general surgery. Family doctors essentially run small businesses that are now harder to afford. Rents, paperwork, IT, and staffing costs have been increasing for years. Still, many family docs only get paid about $40 for a patient visit.
The actual rates have been really stuck for a long time. If you think about that, I don't know if maybe people think of things in their lives like how much you pay for a haircut, how much you take when you take your pet to the vet, how much you pay when you go to the dentist.
I love being a family doctor, and there's really nothing else I ever wanted to do.
But after nearly 3 decades in family medicine, Dr. Fan Hoa Mung is closing her practice in Mississauga, Ontario. She says she never rushed through patients, but now she's overwhelmed with paperwork and can't afford to hire one registered nurse to save their practice.
In the past, it was just enough that we could sustain. And now, with inflation and with increasing administration, it's not sustainable. So I'm frustrated because I think that there should be room in the system for physicians like myself who are interested in the quality of what we provide. And it seems that we're being slowly edged out.
Dr. Mung says she's not sure where she's going to go next. Teaching is an option, but says knowing what the real world looks like for family doctors might make it tough for her to encourage students to open their own offices. Christine Birak, CBC News, Toronto.
If you didn't know, ostriches are pretty fast. We show you just how fast coming up. When it comes to growing flowers in the Canadian climate, greenhouses play an important role. But a grower near Saskatoon has been able to produce her favorite bloom just by tiptoeing downstairs.
Let's take a look at my basement of tulips. It's challenging to grow tulips in Saskatchewan because of the temperatures. Tulips are kind of finicky to grow outside. They require a lot of different temperature fluctuations, the right kind of temperature, the right kind of environment. I kind of fell in love with tulips based on a trip that I took to Amsterdam, and I saw all the beautiful fields there and was like, I want to try this at home. Like, I'm sure I can do this. I took a course based on some growers in Vermont that do winter forcing tulips. And so the tulips that I grow are in crates. They start in my garage and then they finish up in my basement. This one's been growing for a little bit. The buds are just starting to form. So forcing tulips is taking the bulb and rather than planting it outside, you plant in like soil crates. So I do soil forcing. And so that's making sure that the tulips are getting the right amount of cooling and then the right amount of growth, which would be like the root growth and the tip growth, and then the right growing temperature. So I have different stages of tulips. Kind of based on when I need them. So I would actually pick one that's even at this kind of color stage. And my favorite tulip is this one. It's called Columbus. It opens up quite big and it just is, I love pink and it's kind of such a symbol of summer and spring. It's so bright. I love looking at, super bright flowers. So yeah, that's my basement tulip grow room.
Ostriches can run as fast as 70 kilometers per hour thanks to their long, powerful legs. Most of them strut their stuff on savannas and open woodlands in Africa, but not this guy. This young ostrich was seen running down a busy street in South Korea, weaving in and out of traffic. The 4-year-old bird had busted out of a local zoo and made a break for freedom. He ran into a car park where police officers and firefighters captured him using a net. The feathered fugitive is now back in the zoo near Seoul, recovering from the ordeal. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.